The wind screamed over the white world of ice and snow. The sky was gray and cold. Snowflakes moved like tiny blades cutting through the air. Far in the north, where no city lights reached, stood a lonely research station. It was made of steel and thick glass, half buried under frozen layers. Inside the building, machines hummed and heaters fought against the endless cold. Miran sat in the main lab, wearing a thick jacket and gloves. He was a quiet man, someone who preferred the sound of machines over the noise of crowds. For many months, he had worked with a small team of scientists to study ancient ice layers. They wanted to learn how the world had changed thousands of years ago. It was slow, careful work that needed patience and silence. The station had 4 people. There was Miran, the lead researcher. Then there was Tomas, who handled equipment and drilling. Lena managed communication systems, and old Dr. Rovin took care of data records. They had been living together for half a year, far away from everyone. Life was simple, but hard. Each day, they worked with ice cores and samples, trying to read the history of the planet hidden inside the frozen layers. One morning, the machines started to show something unusual. Miran noticed a strange reading from the deep ice scanner. The signal came from more than 80 meters below the surface. It was not rock or air bubbles. The shape was smooth, long, and had a faint metallic reflection. He frowned and looked at the screen again. The pattern looked like a human form. At first he thought it might be an ancient animal or maybe a person from some old expedition that had gone missing years ago. But the signal was too clean. It showed perfect outlines, as if something had been frozen there on purpose. Miran called Tomas to check. Together they studied the readings. Tomas laughed nervously and said it was probably just a trick from the scanner. But Miran felt a strange pull inside, a quiet voice telling him this was something important. By the next day they started drilling toward the shape. The work was slow because the ice was thick and hard. The drill roared for hours, throwing out white mist and small shards of ice. Miran stayed near the site, watching the readings carefully. As the day went on, the shape became clearer on the scanner. It looked like a body lying still, with arms folded over the chest. Lena said they should stop and report it first. She feared it could be a body of someone who died long ago. But Miran wanted to see it with his own eyes. They had spent months studying nothing but ice and air bubbles. Now, something real and alive once was waiting below. He could not walk away. The sun dipped behind the frozen hills. The world turned blue and dark. Lights from the drill rig shone across the snow. The wind grew stronger, shaking the tents. Miran stood near the open pit, his breath making small clouds in the freezing air. The drill stopped, and Tomas shouted that they had reached the lair. Miran climbed down the ladder into the deep hole. The air was cold and sharp. He brushed snow off the wall and gasped. Behind the thin sheet of ice, he saw a face. It was a woman. Her skin was pale and smooth, almost glowing with a soft blue light. Her hair floated around her head, silver in color, frozen like a cloud. Her eyes were closed, and her body was wrapped in a strange material that shimmered faintly under the light. It was not any kind of clothing he knew. It looked like a mix of glass and fabric, soft yet strong. Miran stared in silence. She did not look human, not completely. Her features were fine, her ears slightly pointed, her fingers long and elegant. But her face was peaceful, calm as if she was sleeping, not dead. He felt his heart beat faster. This was no normal discovery. This was something far older, far stranger. When he climbed back up, the others saw his face and went silent. Tomas asked if it was a body. Miran said softly that it was not just a person, it was something else. He told them what he saw. Lena shook her head in disbelief. But Dr. Rovin's eyes were wide with wonder. They worked through the night, trying to clear the rest of the ice carefully. Each piece they removed revealed more of the frozen figure. Soon, the whole body was visible. The woman lay inside a clear block of blue ice, as perfect as a statue. They set up more lights and covered the area with a tent to protect it from the wind. Miran stood before the frozen woman for hours. He could not look away. There was something about her presence that made the air feel different. Heavier but calm, Dr. Roven suggested that the body could be from an ancient civilization lost under the ice. He said maybe it was someone from before recorded history. But Moran knew deep inside that it was not human. The shape, the material, the glow of it matched anything from Earth. Later that night, when the others went back to the station, Moran stayed behind. He wanted to take more notes and guard the site. The lights hummed softly in the tent, casting shadows over the ice. He touched the outer layer of ice. It was cold, but smooth. He felt a faint vibration, as if something deep inside was still alive. He pulled back his hand in surprise. He listened, but the only sound was the wind outside. He leaned closer again. Through the clear ice, he could see tiny bubbles moving, as if the ice was slowly melting from within. Moran felt uneasy. He whispered to himself, wondering how long she had been there. Thousands of years? Maybe more. He thought of the universe and how small humans really were. What if she had come from the stars long before humans learned to make fire? The thought filled him with awe and fear at the same time. He turned to take a photo. But as he lifted the camera, he heard a faint crack. He froze. The sound came from the ice block. A thin white line spread across its surface. Moran stepped back. His breath came out fast. The ice cracked again, louder this time. Pieces began to fall from the sides. Steam rose from the cracks, and a faint blue mist filled the air. He wanted to call the others, but his voice caught in his throat. He could not move. He could only watch. The ice began to glow brighter. The light pulsed like a heartbeat. The woman's face shifted slightly. Her lips parted. Then her eyes opened. They were silver like liquid metal, bright but calm. For a moment she stared straight at him, and Moran felt every sound around him fade away. He took one slow step back. She blinked once, and the glow in her body softened. The ice cracked again, louder now. A large piece broke off and fell to the floor. Water ran over the metal surface of the tent floor, steaming as it touched the cold air. Moran stood frozen, unable to speak. The woman inside moved her hand slightly, pressing it against the ice. Her fingers glowed softly, and more cracks spread across the block. Within seconds, the ice shattered completely. Cold air rushed out. The lights flickered. The woman fell forward, landing gently in Moran's arms. Her body was cold, but not stiff. She breathed slowly, her chest rising and falling. Moran held her carefully, afraid she might vanish if he let go. Her skin felt strange, smooth like glass, but warm where his hand touched. She opened her eyes again and looked at him. Her lips moved, forming a sound he could not understand. He whispered, asking who she was. She did not reply. She only stared at him with a look that carried sadness and something ancient. He carried her to a small heater near the tent wall. He covered her with his coat, trying to warm her. She breathed faster, her eyes watching every light and shadow around her. Moran spoke softly, telling her she was safe. She touched her chest and said a word he did not know. Then she pointed at the sky through the thin tent roof. Her eyes filled with tears, and she whispered again, her voice light and strange. Moran understood only one thing from her gesture. She was not from here. She wanted to go home. At that moment, he knew everything had changed. This was no longer just a frozen body or a discovery for science. It was a living being from another world, alone and lost on Earth. Outside, the storm grew stronger. Snow covered the tent, and the wind howled. Inside, under the weak light, Moran sat beside her, watching her breathe, knowing the world would never be the same again. The storm outside continued through the night. The wind beat against the tent like 1,000 fists. The snow piled high around the camp. Inside, Moran sat beside the strange woman who had come alive under the ice. He still could not believe what he had seen. Only hours ago, she had been frozen in solid ice for ages. And now she was breathing warm and alive in his arms. Her eyes moved slowly. Watching the heater and the light from his lamp, the glow in her skin had faded, but small lines of silver still shone under her neck and wrists. Moran sat quietly, unsure of what to do. He wanted to call the others, but he feared they would panic. They might treat her as a danger, and he did not want that. Something inside told him she meant no harm. He reached for his small flask and offered her water. She looked at it carefully, as if studying the object, then touched his hand gently. Her fingers were cool and soft. She raised the flask and drank a little. Her face softened. Miran smiled. He said slowly, "It is water. It will help you." She looked at him with her silver eyes and repeated one word that sounded close to water. Her voice was clear but had a tone that did not belong to any earth language. It was both musical and mechanical at the same time. Miran pointed at himself and said, "Miran?" She tilted her head, then pointed at him and repeated, "Miran." He nodded, then pointed at her questioningly. She hesitated, looked around, and then touched her chest. She said a word that sounded like Lena. Miran repeated softly, "Lena." For the first time, she smiled. It was a small smile, faint and tired. But it reached her eyes. Miran felt something stir inside him, something between awe and care. He was looking at someone who was not from this world, yet she felt so human in that small moment. Hours passed as the heater hummed quietly. Lena tried to stand but stumbled. Miran helped her sit again. Her body was weak. She seemed to be struggling with the cold. Miran wrapped another blanket around her and moved the heater closer. Suddenly, a small glowing stone fell from her clothing. It rolled on the ground, shining softly. Miran picked it up carefully. It was shaped like a crystal, but pulsed with faint blue light. He held it up, curious. Lena's eyes widened. She reached for it and held it close to her chest, whispering words in her language. The light grew brighter for a moment, then dimmed again. She looked at Miran and spoke softly. He could not understand, but her face showed relief. He guessed it was something important to her. Maybe a piece of her ship or her world. The sound of the wind eased a little, and Miran decided to bring her inside the station where it was warm. He lifted her carefully and carried her through the tunnel toward the main building. She was light, almost weightless. Her skin felt warm now, no longer cold like before. Inside the station, Tomas and Lena were working on equipment repairs when the door opened. They turned and froze. Tomas dropped his tools. Lena's eyes went wide. Miran placed Lena gently on a chair near the heater. He raised his hands and said, "She is alive." She was inside the ice. Lena stuttered, unable to speak. Tomas took a step back, fear and shock mixing on his face. Dr. Roven came out from the side room when he heard the noise. When he saw Lena, he stopped walking and simply stared. For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the soft hum of machines filled the air. Finally, Dr. Roven walked closer. He adjusted his glasses and whispered, "This is not possible." Miran replied quietly, "She is not human. But she is alive, and she understands." Lena looked at them, sensing their fear. She spoke softly, her voice calm. The words were strange, but the tone carried peace. She pressed her hand to her chest and then to her lips, a gesture of greeting. Lena whispered, "She is saying hello." Tomas crossed his arms. "We should contact the authorities. This is too big. We cannot keep her here." Miran shook his head. "No, not yet. She is weak. If we tell them now, they will take her away. She needs help first." Dr. Roven nodded slowly. "He is right. We need to understand what she is before anyone else does. If this is real, she may be the first living being from another world that humans have ever met." They decided to keep it quiet for now. Only the four of them knew. For the next few hours, they took care of her. Lena brought her warm food. Lena looked unsure, but tasted it. She smiled when she felt the warmth of soup. Tomas stayed away, nervous, but he kept the heaters running. Dr. Roven began writing notes, watching her movements carefully. Miran tried again to communicate. He drew shapes on paper, pointing to them. He drew a star and said the word star. Lena watched and then took the pencil from him. Her hand moved with strange grace. She drew a cluster of stars and then drew a large one with rings around it. She pointed at it and said a word that sounded like Varen. Moran guessed it might be the name of her world. She then drew a small shape falling from the sky toward a blue planet. Like Earth, she placed her hand on that planet and looked sad. Moran understood. She was telling him she had fallen from the sky. Lena whispered, "She is lost." Lena turned her gaze toward the window. The storm had stopped, and through the thick glass, stars shone above the frozen land. She looked at them for a long time, whispering the same word again, Varen. That night, everyone went to rest except Moran. He could not sleep. He sat in the control room watching data screens and camera feeds. His thoughts were heavy. What if this discovery changed everything? What if her people came looking for her? He looked through the glass toward the lab where Lena rested. She was sitting up now, looking at her glowing crystal. The light reflected on her face, soft and calm. She pressed the crystal against a small console in the lab. To Moran's surprise, the nearby computer screen flickered, showing strange symbols. He rushed to her. "Lena, what are you doing?" She looked at him and smiled. Her hand moved across the screen, and lines of unknown writing appeared. The computer began to show pattern stars, numbers, and maps. Moran watched in awe. She pointed at one of the images. It looked like a cluster of stars and a bright blue planet among them. She said again, "Varan." Then she pointed to Earth's symbol on the map. She looked sad but hopeful. Moran nodded slowly. "You are far from home," she nodded back, eyes full of emotion. Suddenly, alarms from the communication system began to beep. Lena and Tomas came running. The main antenna was picking up something unusual. A signal short pulses, repeating again and again. Lena checked the frequency. It is not a natural signal. It is too regular. Someone is sending this. Moran looked at Lena. She had stood up, her eyes wide with recognition. She said something quickly in her language and pressed her hand against the screen. The signal changed tone for a moment, as if responding. Dr. Roven whispered, "It is her people." Lena seemed to understand the signal, but looked worried. She shook her head and stepped back. She said a few sharp words, her voice tense. Then she pointed outside. Moran looked through the window. The sky above the glacier glowed faintly with strange lights, like green ribbons mixed with silver sparks. They moved fast across the clouds. Tomas gasped. "That is not the northern light. Those are ships." Lena pressed her hands together and lowered her head. She looked afraid, not happy. Moran asked softly, "Are they your people?" She looked at him and said one word that made his blood turn cold. "War." The others looked at each other. Dr. Roven said quietly, "She was running from them." Moran tried to calm her. "You are safe here. No one will harm you." Lena took the crystal and held it tightly. She spoke softly, and for a moment, the glow around her body returned. The air grew warm, and the lights on the machines flickered again. Then it stopped. Moran placed a hand on her shoulder. "We will help you." Lena looked at him with gratitude. She said slowly in broken English, "Help." Everyone fell silent. It was the first human word she had spoken. That single word changed everything in the room. The fear faded. The scientists no longer saw her as a mystery. They saw her as a being who needed them. They spent the next hours planning what to do. Lena suggested they could send a weak signal to nearby satellites to warn them about the strange objects in the sky. Tomas still wanted to contact the government, but Moran refused. "If we call them, they will take her. We do not know what they will do. Maybe they will lock her away, study her, or use her for their gain. She trusted us first. We must not betray that trust." Roven nodded. "For now, we keep her safe and learn what we can." As the night passed, the lights in the sky disappeared. The signal grew faint until it stopped. Lena finally fell asleep near the heater, holding her crystal. Moran sat beside her, keeping watch. He could hear the wind returning outside, soft now like whispers. He looked at her face, peaceful and still. He wondered how a being from another world could look so human, and why fate had brought her here under the ice. He did not know what waited for them next, but one thing was clear. Humanity had made first contact, not through war or conquest, but through kindness. And for now, one man's choice to help a stranger might decide the future of both worlds. The next morning, the world outside the station was calm again. The storm had stopped, and the glacier stretched far and white under the pale sun. The air was still and cold. Inside the research station, 4 humans and the alien woman moved carefully through a strange new day. Lena sat near the window, wrapped in a thick blanket. She watched the snow in silence. Her eyes were tired but peaceful. Moran brought her a cup of warm soup and set it beside her. She looked up and smiled softly. He could see that she was still weak, but stronger than before. Lena and Dr. Rovin sat at the table studying the notes from last night. They had recorded the signal that came from the sky. It was short and clear, made of repeating pulses that formed patterns. No natural source could make it. The frequency was far beyond normal communication range, Rovin said quietly. It is not random. There is a pattern. Every 6th pulse is different. It repeats every 30 seconds. It must be a message, Lena nodded. It came at the same time when she reacted. Maybe it was calling her. Tomas entered the room holding a tablet. I checked the satellite feed. Something was moving above us during the storm. It was big. It vanished after an hour. No known aircraft was in that area. The room fell silent. Everyone turned toward Lena. She looked back at them with calm eyes. Moran walked closer and sat near her. He said gently, Lena, we heard sounds from the sky. Was it your people? She took a moment, then nodded slowly. Her hands moved as she tried to explain. She pointed at her crystal, then at the sky. She said words that sounded like search and call. Moran tried to follow her gestures. Rovin whispered, They are looking for her. Lena shook her head and said another word sharply. It sounded like danger. She pressed her hand against her heart, then drew a circle in the air and made a motion like an explosion. Moran understood. They are not rescuers. They are enemies. Lena looked down. Her eyes filled with sadness. She touched the crystal again, and a faint image appeared above it. The light formed a small projection showing 2 planets and a line between them. One planet was bright and blue, the other red and broken. Small dots moved around the broken one like ships or weapons. She pointed at the broken planet and said, War. Then she pointed at the blue one and said again, Veyaren. The humans watched in silence. They understood that her world had been destroyed. She had escaped. The ships from the night before were not her friends. They were hunters, Lena whispered. She must have been hiding here for thousands of years. Maybe they were still searching, even after all this time, Moran said softly, and now they know she is awake again. Lena looked at him with fear in her eyes. She spoke fast in her language, pointing at the computer and then at the antenna outside. Moran realized she wanted to stop the signal. Maybe it was still broadcasting. He rushed to the control room with her. Together they worked on the system. She moved her hands over the keyboard like she had done it before. Strange code appeared on the screen, symbols that the system did not recognize. Then she pressed her crystal against the side of the console. The monitors flickered, and the signal stopped. The air grew quiet. Moran looked at her and asked, Are we safe now? She paused before answering. Safe. Not long. Her voice was soft, but clear. It was the second time she spoke in English. Moran understood that she was learning quickly. For the rest of the day, they stayed alert. The station was silent, except for the low hum of generators. The others tried to act normal, but fear was in their eyes. Every sound from the wind made them look up. Every shadow across the ice made them tense. At night, Moran could not sleep. He sat in the control room again, watching the radar. The screen was empty. He looked at Lena sitting quietly near the heater, her eyes closed. Holding the glowing crystal, he walked over and sat beside her. Can you tell me what happened to your world? He asked softly. She opened her eyes slowly. For a moment, she seemed to look far away into memory. Then she began to speak, mixing her language with broken English. She told him her world was full of light and oceans that shone like silver. Her people lived in harmony for a long time until they discovered something powerful, an energy that could shape matter. They used it to build great ships and machines, but soon they fought over control. Her planet turned to war. The sky burned and the oceans turned dark. She fled with others in small ships, hoping to find peace somewhere. But the enemy followed them. Her ship was damaged and she crashed on Earth, where the cold ice covered her body and kept her alive through ages of sleep. Moran listened without interrupting. He could see the pain in her eyes. When she finished, she looked down and said quietly, "I am last." He replied, "You are not alone anymore." She looked up, surprised by his words. He smiled gently. "You are here now, and we will help you. You are safe with us." Her eyes softened. She placed her hand on his chest for a moment, a gesture of gratitude. Human... kind. Later that night, Miran checked the outside temperature and systems. Everything seemed normal until a small red light started blinking on the radar screen. It was a moving object. He called Lena and Tomas. They looked at the data. The object was flying slowly above the glacier, circling near the station. Lena said, "It is not a plane. It is too quiet, and it has no signal ID." Tomas grabbed his coat. "I will check from the lookout." He climbed the steel stairs to the upper deck with binoculars. The wind was strong, and snow blew across his face. Then he saw a small, dark shape moving in the distance, shining with pale blue lights. It made no sound. He rushed back down. "There is something out there. It is scanning the ground." Lena came to the window and looked out. Her eyes widened. She said one word in her language, filled with fear. Then she turned to them and said clearly, "They found me." Moran's heart raced. "How?" "The signal is off." She pointed at her crystal and said something fast. Rovan understood before anyone else. "They can track her energy." "The crystal is like a beacon," Moran said. "Then we need to hide it." Lena shook her head. "Cannot. It is life. Without it, I die." The group fell silent. They were trapped. They could not destroy the signal without harming her. The light outside moved closer. The sound of a low hum filled the air. The power in the station flickered. Tools on the tables rattled. The machines began to lose charge. Lena stood up, holding the crystal tight. Her eyes glowed faintly again. The hum from outside grew louder, then stopped. She whispered softly in her language. The lights in the room steadied again. Whatever she did, it blocked the scanning beam for a moment. Moran said, "What did you do?" She replied in broken words, "Hide us." For now, the team stayed awake through the night, waiting for the sound to return. But it never did. When dawn came, the radar was clear again. Everyone looked exhausted. Tomas muttered, "We cannot stay here. If they come again, we will not survive." Rovan nodded. "We must move her somewhere safe. Somewhere underground." Moran looked at Lena. She seemed to understand their plan. She spoke slowly. "Ship. My ship. Under ice." They all stared at her. Moran said, "Your ship is here." She nodded. "Deep. South Valley. Broken, but heart still alive." Rovan smiled with sudden hope. "If we can reach it, maybe it has tools or power to protect her." Tomas sighed. "That place is far. It will take hours through ice." Moran looked at the map on the table. "Then we leave at dawn." The next day, they packed supplies and equipment. They covered the station windows to hide the lights. Lena wore a thick coat over her strange suit, the crystal tied close to her chest. She looked stronger now, her silver eyes sharp and alert. The journey began across the frozen plain. The snow was deep and the wind harsh. Moran led the way with the scanner. Lena walked beside him, and the others followed, with sleds carrying supplies. The sun rose weakly, painting the ice in pale gold. Hours passed before they reached the edge of a deep valley. Below, frozen cliffs shone like glass. Lena pointed toward a spot halfway down the slope. There, she said, they tied ropes and began to descend carefully. Halfway down, Miran saw a strange reflection under the ice. It was not natural. It looked like metal shaped by hands. When they reached it, he brushed off the snow. A curved surface appeared, smooth and silver. It was a part of a ship buried for ages. Lena placed her hand on it. The crystal in her hand glowed brighter. The metal under the ice responded with a soft hum. She said quietly, "Home." The sound spread through the ice like a heartbeat. The buried structure began to light up from within, showing long lines of energy running deep into the glacier. The air filled with a faint vibration. Moran felt the ground shake. He looked at her in awe. "It still works." "Okay." Lena nodded slowly. Little life still there? As they stood in the glow of the ancient ship, none of them knew that far above the sky. The enemy had already detected that faint pulse. The hunters had found their trail again, and time was running out. The frozen valley was silent except for the soft hum of Lena's crystal. The buried ship glowed faintly under the ice. Moran, Tomas, Lena, and Dr. Rovin stood around it, amazed. For centuries, this ship had slept beneath the glacier, hidden from the universe. Now it stirred again. Lena knelt beside the entrance hatch, placing her glowing crystal on a small panel. Lines of light spread across the metal surface, forming symbols Moran had never seen. Her hands moved gracefully, pressing, sliding, and tracing the shapes. With each movement, the ship responded. The air hummed with energy. Suddenly, a sharp sound cut through the quiet. A high-pitched alert came from the radar Tomas carried. "They're here," he shouted. Moran looked up. Far above the white plain, strange lights appeared again. They moved fast, cutting through the sky with precision. The ships were smaller than he expected, but numerous. The hum of their engines vibrated through the ice. "They are hunters," Lena said, her silver eyes flashing. She pressed her hand on the crystal, and the light pulsed faster. "We cannot stop them." Tomas swallowed hard. "Then we run?" Moran nodded. "We do not fight. We move. We protect her."
The group worked quickly.
Lena guided them into a narrow tunnel beneath the ship. The metal doors closed behind them, sealing the cold outside. The interior was bright with soft white light, walls covered with strange panels that hummed with power. Lena's fingers traced them as she explained, slowly and in broken English, that the ship still had power cores, navigation systems, and shields that could protect them if used carefully. Dr. Rovin examined the panels with wonder. "This technology is beyond anything on Earth," he whispered. "It could change humanity if we understand it," Moran said firmly. "We focus on keeping her safe first. The rest comes later." Outside, the hunters circled the glacier, scanning with energy beams. Small probes dropped from the ships, scanning the snow for heat signatures. Lena activated the ship's shields. A blue glow spread over the surface, reflecting the lights from the sky. The probes hit the shield and were deflected harmlessly. "This is good," Moran said, watching the lights bounce. "It will hold them for a while." Lena shook her head. "Not long. They adapt. They see patterns." She guided them to a secondary chamber where she activated a map of the surrounding land. The glowing lines showed safe paths through hidden tunnels, ice caves, and deep valleys. "Follow," she said. "We go south. Faster." The team packed quickly. Tomas carried equipment, Rovin monitored the crystal, Lena kept an eye on the lights outside, and Moran stayed close to Lena. Every step through the ship felt strange but necessary. The floor hummed under their boots, as if the ship itself was alive. When they reached the exit hatch, Lena paused. She touched the door and whispered to it. A faint glow enveloped the tunnel, and then they were ready. She looked at Moran. "You ready?" He nodded. "Let's go." The hatch opened, revealing the frozen landscape. Snow whipped around them, and the sky was streaked with silver and green from the hunters above. Lena led the way across the ice, moving faster than her strength should have allowed. Moran struggled to keep pace, carrying a bag of supplies. They reached a deep ice canyon. The walls rose high on both sides, narrow at the bottom. Lena pressed her hand against the ice, and faint blue lines appeared, showing a hidden path. They followed it, careful not to make noise. Suddenly, a light swept across the canyon floor. One of the hunters' ships had descended, scanning for heat. Tomas froze. Lena pulled him behind a rock formation. The light passed. She sees us, Tomas whispered. No, Lena said. They sense her energy. We must hide better. The group moved through the canyon, using every shadow and ice wall as cover. Every step was tense. Even a small sound could reveal them. Outside, the wind howled, carrying snow like mist. Hours passed. The canyon ended, and they reached a narrow ice bridge over a frozen river. Lena stepped lightly, guiding the others. Midway across, Tomas slipped. Moran grabbed his arm just in time. The ice groaned but held. Careful, Moran said. Tomas nodded, breathing hard. Below, the frozen river stretched into darkness. The ice was thick, but the hunters above might detect movement. Lena whispered words in her language, and a soft shield surrounded the bridge. It flickered faintly, like a second layer of ice. They crossed safely. At the other end, a hidden cave entrance appeared. Lena's crystal glowed brighter. Inside, she said, the cave was deep and wide, carved by ice and wind over centuries. Lena guided them through twisting tunnels, the glow of her crystal lighting the walls. The hunters above tried to scan the land, but the tunnels hid them. They stopped in a large chamber, where the ice walls shimmered with natural crystals. Lena pressed her hand against the floor. Energy lines ran from her crystal into the ice, forming a soft, protective shield around the chamber. They cannot enter here, Lena said. For now, Moran exhaled. Safe for a while, at least. Lena nodded but looked worried. Not forever. They adapt quickly. If they find the pulse, they will dig. We must move again soon. Dr. Roven looked around, awe in his eyes. Even hidden, this place is incredible. The energy here, it could power whole cities on Earth. Miran placed a hand on his shoulder. We focus on survival. That comes first. The team rested briefly. Tomas set up extra heaters. Lena monitored sensors. Roven studied Lena's crystal, trying to understand its power. Moran stayed near Lena, watching her carefully. As night fell, the sky above the cave shimmered faintly with distant lights. The hunters had not left, only hovered, scanning the ice. Lena stood near the center of the chamber. She held the crystal, whispering in her language. The glow pulsed like a heartbeat. Moran approached her. You are tired. Rest. She shook her head. Cannot? They watch. Must keep pulse small. He frowned. What do you mean? The crystal is life. It shows energy. They sense it. If I rest fully, they find us. Moran understood. The hunters could track her power even while hidden. They had no choice but to keep moving. The next day, they prepared to leave the cave. Lena's crystal mapped another path. It led to an ancient ice canyon farther south, where she remembered part of her ship buried under layers of ice. Miran looked at her. We go there. It is dangerous, but it is the best chance. Lena nodded, her eyes silver and determined. Heart of ship. Alive. We reach. They packed supplies and moved carefully through the tunnels. The journey was slow and harsh. Snowstorms returned, covering the landscape. The hunters followed, adjusting their paths, using long-range scans to detect even faint warmth. At one point, a storm hit. Wind tore across the ice, snow blinding their vision. Lena led them using only the crystal's light. Moran struggled to keep pace, carrying Roven's pack. Tomas and Lena followed closely. Every step was heavy and cold, but Lena's confidence guided them. Hours later, they reached the edge of a massive glacier. Lena's crystal pulsed brighter. She pointed to a location below. Ice and snow covered something metallic. The ship, she whispered. Moran looked closely. The silver surface of the buried craft glimmered faintly. It was bigger than they expected, long and elegant. Part of it was broken, but the heart, the power core, still pulsed with energy. They began clearing snow carefully. Lena worked with them, her hands glowing faintly as she touched the metal. Energy flowed through her fingers, melting ice and revealing the ship beneath. Suddenly, a hum from the sky alerted them. The hunters had arrived again. A squad of small ships circled above, scanning. Light beams cut across the ice. Miran shouted, "Hurry!" They worked quickly. Lena guided them to a side hatch. Miran opened it, and they all entered. Inside, the ship hummed with life. Panels lit up, showing power levels. Lena placed her crystal on the control panel. Light spread across the interior. The hunters above tried to scan, but the ship's energy shield deflected every beam. Lena pressed her hand on the core and the hum grew louder. The shield extended outward, covering the glacier. Miran looked at her. "You did it." She nodded. "Safe, for now. But not long. They will not stop." Outside, the hunters hovered, lights scanning, waiting for a way in. Inside, the humans and Lena prepared. They had found the heart of the ship. For the first time, they could fight or escape if necessary. Miran realized the journey was not over. They were alive, but the enemy was patient, clever, and relentless. Every choice mattered. Lena stood at the helm, crystal glowing. She looked at Miran next. "Step," she said. Miran nodded. "We survive. Then we plan." The pulse of the ship echoed through the glacier, a heartbeat in the frozen world. Above, the hunters waited. Below, humans and aliens stood together, ready to face what came next. The buried ship hummed with power beneath the glacier. Its blue lights reflected off the icy walls of the cavern. Inside, Lena and the humans worked quickly, preparing the systems for the next step. They had survived storms, hunters, and long treks across the frozen world. Now, the ship's heart was alive again, and hope spread quietly through the group. Lena moved across the control panels, her fingers glowing softly. She placed the crystal in a slot at the center of the console. Energy lines spread through the ship, lighting every corridor and panel. The shield extended further, covering the glacier with a protective bubble of shimmering blue light. Miran stood beside her, watching. "It's working," he said. "The shield is strong. The hunters cannot reach us here." She nodded, her silver eyes focused. "Strong. For now. But they learn. They are patient." Dr. Roven examined the ship's instruments. "This technology is incredible. If humans could understand even half of it, it would change everything. Energy, travel, communication. Nothing we have compares." Miran placed a hand on Roven's shoulder. "We focus on survival. Everything else comes later." Outside, the hunters circled above the glacier, scanning for a weakness. Their small ships moved quickly, precise, and relentless. The light from the ship's shield reflected in their sensors, forcing them to pause. They could not penetrate it, at least not yet. Lena spoke softly to Miran. "We must leave. They will not stop." Miran nodded. "Where do we go?" She pointed to the crystal, which projected a map of the stars. She traced a path with her finger. Home. Far. Safe place. Beyond their reach, he understood. She wanted to return to her people, or at least find a place where she could be free. Tomas checked the supplies. "We have enough fuel for the ship, but not for a long journey. We must plan carefully." Lena monitored the radar. "Hunters are still above. They will follow if we leave now. But the shield may give us time." Lena pressed her hand on the main console. "We start." Soon, the humans moved quickly. Tomas and Lena helped secure equipment. Dr. Roven examined the ship, learning from Lena as best he could. Miran stayed close to her, feeling the weight of responsibility. She was no longer a frozen stranger. She was alive, intelligent, the key to a journey none of them could fully understand. When the hunters noticed movement, their lights swept across the glacier. One ship dropped low, scanning for heat. The shield blocked it, but the energy pulse was visible. They were aware of the escape attempt. Miran looked at Lena. "We cannot wait any longer. We go now." She nodded and pressed a series of buttons. The ship vibrated, and a soft hum filled the chamber. The main engines powered up. Lights flashed along the corridors, illuminating the interior in pale blue. "Everyone ready?" Miran asked. They nodded. Lena activated the lift system. The ship rose slowly from the ice, its engines humming louder with each meter. Outside, the hunters noticed the movement. Their small ships accelerated toward the glacier, but the shield held. Moran watched the horizon. Hold on, this is going to be rough. The ship lifted higher. Snow and ice scattered below. The hunters tried to follow, but the shield created a barrier they could not cross. The ship's engines roared, and energy pulsed through the crystal. Lena guided the controls with precision, moving them across the frozen sky. As they climbed, the hunters changed formation. Some tried to flank them, others followed directly. The ship's sensors tracked every movement. Lena adjusted the shield, extending it to cover a wider area. Dr. Roven spoke quietly. I do not know how long we can keep this up. The energy drain will be significant. Lena looked at him calmly. Enough to escape. The humans felt tension in every moment. One wrong move could mean capture. One mistake could end everything. But Lena's focus and skill kept them moving, steady, and deliberate. Hours passed as they crossed the frozen landscape. The hunters pursued, but the ship moved faster than expected. Lena used the crystal to boost power to the engines, creating bursts that carried them over the mountains and valleys. Finally, they reached the edge of the northern ice fields. Beyond lay open skies and distant stars. Lena pointed upward. Safe. Sky, Moran felt relief wash over him. The hunters could not follow beyond the atmosphere. Once they reached space, they would be free. The ship accelerated, leaving the planet behind. The blue ice glowed faintly below as they climbed higher. The humans looked out the windows at the receding world. Snow, ice, and frozen plains stretched endlessly. They had survived against impossible odds. Lena exhaled slowly, her hands relaxing. Almost home. Dr. Roven smiled faintly. You saved her. You saved all of us. Moran shook his head. We all survived together. That is the important part, Lena nodded. I never thought we would see this day. Tomas laughed softly. Not in a million years? And yet here we are. Lena touched the crystal again. The projection of stars appeared above the console. She traced a path with her fingers, pointing to a distant cluster of light. Vaharan. Farah. Safe. Moran looked at her. Will you ever go back to your world? She shook her head. Gone, only. Memory, but hope. New world. Maybe Earth. Friend. Her words made him understand that she had accepted a future among humans, or at least with them. She was alive, and humanity had a chance to help her build a new life. The ship moved past the planet's atmosphere. Stars stretched across the sky in ribbons of silver. Lena guided the controls, making small adjustments, her eyes calm and determined. The shield remained active until they reached a safe distance. Finally, they were in space, far from the hunters. The ship's engines powered down slightly. The glow of the crystal filled the interior with soft light. Moran looked around at the humans. We made it. We are safe. Lena nodded, touching each of their hands. Thank. Humans. You brave, kind, heart-strong. Roven studied her closely. You have taught us more than we could ever learn from books or machines. Humanity has potential beyond belief. Moran smiled softly. Sometimes we just need to make the right choice. To help instead of fear. Lena looked at the crystal and whispered words in her language. The lights on the ship pulsed softly, as if responding to her thoughts. She turned to Moran. Future. Bright Earth. Friend, we learned together. The humans felt hope for the first time in many days. Against impossible odds, they had survived. Against a universe that seemed vast and uncaring, they had made a difference. As the stars stretched around them, Lena guided the ship toward the distant cluster of planets. Moran looked out at the universe, feeling small but important. He realized that kindness, courage, and trust had created this moment. Humanity had faced the unknown and chosen to protect rather than destroy. The ship moved steadily, leaving the hunters behind. Small fragments of ice and snow fell into the void, but they no longer mattered. The pulse of the crystal was steady now, a heartbeat among the stars. Lena finally spoke in English again. Home, new home, with you. Moran nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility and the warmth of hope. We will make it together. We will protect you. The humans and Lena worked together as the ship traveled deeper into space. They planned, learned, and shared stories. Every hour strengthened the bond between them. Humanity and Alien had faced the cold, the hunters, and the frozen planet Tand. They had survived. Days passed in the quiet hum of the ship. Lena taught the humans what she could about her world and technology. They listened and learned, fascinated by the knowledge she shared. In turn, they taught her about Earth and humanity. Small conversations became lessons in trust and friendship. Finally, they approached a distant planet rich in light, water, and life. Lena's crystal pulsed brightly. Safe here, she said. No hunters. Can rest, build. Moran smiled, feeling a wave of relief. We made it. The humans and Lena stood together, looking at the planet. It was bright, full of possibilities. The journey had been long and dangerous, but hope had survived. The stars surrounded them, a promise of the future. Lena held her crystal to Moran. You. Kind you. Strong Earth has hope. Human heart. Brave. Moran looked back at her and nodded. And you have hope too. Together, we will protect it. The ship landed gently on the distant planet. The shield hummed softly, creating a barrier that ensured safety. Lena stepped out first, feeling the new ground beneath her feet. Moran, Lena, Tomas, and Rovan followed. The air was fresh, the sky bright, and the world full of possibilities. Lena looked at the stars above, then at the humans around her. Thank all of you. You made New World possible, Moran smiled. This is just the beginning. Humanity and your kind can learn together. We can make it better. She nodded, her silver eyes shining. Yes, better. Heart strong. Hope alive. Above them, the stars stretched endlessly, silent witnesses to courage, kindness, and survival. Below, the humans and Lena stood together, facing the future with determination. Humanity had met another world and it had chosen hope. The ship's lights dimmed. The crystal pulsed gently, and the first day on the new planet began. Moran looked at Lena and whispered, We did it. We survived. We made a promise to the stars. She smiled, her eyes full of light. Promise. Kept. New world. Begin. And so, humanity and the alien woman stepped into the unknown, ready to create a future filled with trust, courage, and hope.